So in the previous video, I have discussed about the methods of asexual reproduction in the case of plants, both the natural as well as the artificial methods. In today's class, let us try to understand about the sexual reproduction in plants. So when we say the process as sexual reproduction, it is involving either sexes, that is the male and female sexes. So when we talk about the plants, okay, the male gametes are the pollen grains and the female gametes are the ova or the egg. And during the process of sexual reproduction, there will be fusion of the male and female gametes, which will result in the formation of a zygote. So when the gametes are getting fused and when there is a formation of zygote, it is called as fertilization. So after fertilization, the zygote that is formed will develop into an embryo and further it will develop into a seed. So like that, we have the development of seeds, okay, within the fruit, and that is how, okay, from the flower there will be formation of a fruit. You can understand that once I explain with the process, we can clearly understand how actually the fruit is getting developed. Because of the process of sexual reproduction, the seeds will be formed and also the fruit will develop. Okay, so let us first go on with the important step in sexual reproduction, that is pollination. So pollination is a process in which the male gametes, which are the pollen grains, will be reaching the female gamete, that is the ova or the egg, which is present within the ovules. So pollination is nothing but it is transfer of the pollen from the anther portion. So this is the anther, okay, or the stamens, from the anther of the stamens to the sticky stigma. So stigma is the female portion of the flower, as you can see. So stigma, style, ovary, which will have the ovules. So this is the gynoecium or the pistil or the carpel, which is the female structure within the flower. So this is a bisexual flower which is having both the male and female parts within the same flower. So in this case, the pollination, when it occurs, the pollen will fall onto the sticky stigma. So transfer of the pollen grains, okay, from the anther to the sticky stigma is what is called as pollination. So actually stigma will be having some sugar-like substances, some sort of chemicals it will be releasing, which will attract the pollen grains very easily. So what are the agents which will transfer the pollen grains onto the stigma is, yes, you know that it is air or the wind is the main source. Also water, insects, animals, bats, birds, man, anyone can become an agent in transferring the pollen grains. So usually it will occur through the wind, okay, without the assistance of any of this thing, easily it can occur through the wind. So when we talk about pollination, pollination can be of two types. One is called the self-pollination, other one is called as the cross-pollination. So what is self-pollination? When a flower is bisexual, that is when both the male and female parts are available within the same flower, like here what I have drawn. So what will happen? The pollen has high chances of falling onto the stigma of the same flower. So when pollen grains of a flower will fall onto the stigma of the same flower, when pollination occurs within the same flower, it is called self-pollination. When pollination occurs between different flowers of the same plant or different flowers of different plants belonging to the same species, it is called cross-pollination. So cross-pollination usually will lead to a lot of variations, okay, because it is in between two flowers. So there can be new variants that can be coming up. Hybrids can develop in a better way during cross-pollination. Self-pollination actually limits the number of variants. There won't be much variations in the offspring or the progeny that is produced. Okay, so this is about the pollination process. So now let us understand about the pollen grain. So pollen grain, actually when you tap the pollen grains onto a small slide and when you look it under the microscope, what you can see is a structure like this. So an intine and exine covering like this, and inside you see two nucleus will be there. One is called the generative nucleus, other one is called the tube nucleus will be there. So the tube nucleus which is there, the main function is, okay, it will help in formation of the pollen tube, a long pollen tube, so that, okay, the nucleus of the pollen grain will be taken towards the female gamete, that is the egg, okay, which is present within the ovule. So the main function of the tube nucleus is it helps in the formation of the pollen tube. So once the pollen tube is formed, this will disappear, the tube nucleus. Then generative nucleus is the actual structure which will be helping in formation of the two male gametes that will be participating in the double fertilization process, and they are the one which are actually helping in the formation of the seed. They are the one which will be helping in the process of sexual reproduction. So let us see how all the process actually takes place. So when the pollen grain falls onto the sticky stigma, here I have drawn the structure in a bigger way. So this is the stigma portion, this is the style, and this is the ovary with only one ovule. So in this flower we have drawn many ovules, as you can see, but only one ovule. I have drawn it in a bigger way so that you can understand the process of seed formation at each of these ovules. So what is happening when during pollination, the pollen has fallen onto the sticky stigma. So out of the pollen grains that have fallen onto the stigma, only one will successfully germinate like that, and it will form a big pollen tube like this. So as I told you already, the tube nucleus will help in formation of this long pollen tube from the germinating pollen grain, and this pollen tube will enter into the ovule through the micropylar end. The end is called the micropylar end. A small opening will be there. Okay, so after that the tube nucleus will disappear once the pollen tube is formed. Then the generative nucleus that is there will divide into two structures which are the male gametes, So these two are the male gametes which are formed by the generative nucleus. So these two will come through the pollen tube that has been formed by the tube nucleus. They will come near to the ovule region. So when you talk about the ovule, this is the ovule, which is also called the embryo sac or female gametophyte, it is called. So when you see the structure of the ovule, we have how many cells? We have 7 cells and 8 nuclei. How many? 7 cells and 8 nuclei are there. So actually, 7 cells and 8 nuclei will be there within the embryo sac. So now what is happening through this pollen tube? The two nuclei which are there, which are the sperms or the male gametes, not the sperms exactly, here we call them as the nuclei of the pollen grain. So they will come and enter into this point. So here actually, what are all the cells? If you see, we have 3 cells towards the chalazel end. These are called the antipodal cells. Antipodal cells' function is to provide nourishment to the developing embryo. That is the main function. Then we have a central nuclei or the polar nuclei. This is called as central nuclei or the polar nuclei or the secondary nuclei in the center, which will have 2 nucleus in that. Then towards the micropylar end, we have 3 cells, out of which 2 cells are called the synergids. Synergids' function is to direct the pollen tube towards the egg, which is the present in the middle like this. So what is happening? So these 2 nuclei will enter inside. One of the nucleus will be with the egg, which it will fuse with the egg nucleus, and one more nuclei will come and join this region. So this becomes the 3N region. So depending upon the number of nucleus, the ploidy is given, it is called as ploidy. So here actually the ova which is there, here one nucleus enters here, or the gamete, one of the gamete which is formed by the generative nucleus enters and fuses with the ova here, ova nucleus. Another nucleus will fuse with this one, which is the polar nuclei, which is already having 2 nucleus. So when this third nucleus enters there, it will become 3N, triploid it becomes triploid. So this triploid nucleus that is there will develop into what is called as endosperm in future, which will provide nourishment to the zygote that is formed after fertilization. So these two will get fused off, and now it is a fertilized ova or the zygote. So this zygote will develop into embryo, and slowly it will develop into the seed. And for development of that seed, the nutrition all is provided by the antipodals, and particularly by this 3N structure, that is the endosperm, which is also called as PEN, primary endospermic nucleus. It is called as the primary endospermic nucleus. So slowly, after fertilization, zygote will develop into embryo, and embryo becomes seed. The external all structures that are there would form the seed coat. They become the seed coat. So like this, all the ovules, depending upon the number of ovules that are present in the flower, all the ovules will get converted into seeds, and the wall of the ovary then will expand, and that becomes the fruit. Once the fruit has developed, all other parts, that is the corolla portion, the calyx portion, will shrivel and they will fall off, and finally we are left with a fruit that is formed from a flower. So this is how actually from a flower, okay, a fruit is getting formed with all the seeds inside, and for the formation of the seeds, the process is double fertilization. Why it is called double fertilization? The two gametes that are formed by the generative nucleus, one is getting fused here, other one is getting fused there. So two times actually there is a fusion process which is going on. That's why in case of plants, the sexual reproduction is called as double fertilization. So this is how double fertilization would take place, and this will result in the formation of the fruit in the end. Okay, so sometimes the calyx region, okay, like in the case of pomegranate, it may remain like that only. In some of the cases they may remain, but in almost all the cases they will shrivel off. So this type of double fertilization we will see in the case of angiosperms, that is the flowering plants, So hope you understood. This is quite easy. Once you understand the process, it is quite easy to draw and, okay, explain everything. So this is all about the double fertilization process. So hope you understood.